because once we understand those 3 or 4 things, then we can be able to find our way around black text, right? So now that we know what it is, we need to view it in a certain way, and once we do that, then we can be able to then build and work around that. So the first one we said is when you look at text, black text, you must realize that it is a system that was brought to us by the old regime, right? So black text is a result of the discrimination, especially structural discrimination that happened prior to our democracy, right? So it was brought to us. The divide between white and black, the divide between rich and poor was because of that system. And we said number 2, the other thing that we need to realize about black text. Let me check. Do you remember what was the second thing? So we said 1, black text is a structural thing from the structural regime before, post, or before the dawn of democracy. So that was the first thing. So once we know and understand that, then we can work around black text, because we know where it comes from and what brought it into the fore. So number 2, do you remember?
Was it not managing expectations?
Sorry?
Was it not managing expectations?
Unspoken expectations, right? So that's the other thing that we need to take into account, especially when we view black text. There's always expectations that sometimes, or most of the time, are not spoken, right? And you made an example that no matter what you do at home, if there's a need and you're a professional, you're working out of university, your parents might not tell you, but they're expecting you. They might not say it that, hey, you know, but the fact is, there's an expectation. They expect that you'll be able to assist in the home as well. So that's another thing that we need to look at. It's a very salient feature, but it's the truth. And the third one?
Must learn to say no. For the definition of the black text or the point.
Yeah. So in a way, we said it's important to know and build better financial habits, right?
Oh.
Personal finance, managing your money. That's where things like how do you factor in that black text so that if you feel morally obliged, if you factor it in, right, within the ambit of your personal financial goals, then you feel good about it. But if you don't have a plan, financial plan, there's always a risk to that. So I just want to take you through in the next few slides whether black text is a benefit or a burden. Now there's a few things that we already established in that we make about 5 different financial decisions each day. We did talk about that yesterday. Whether we are aware of it or we are not aware. In fact, the saddest thing, and we mentioned it yesterday, the saddest thing is that we make these financial decisions unaware. Right? We make these financial decisions unaware. The amount of money that you spend on coffee, whether you are aware of it or not, is a financial decision. The amount of money that you spend on your lunch, aware or not, is a financial decision at the end of the day. I sat with a client who used to spend about $20 for coffee each day, and we said, let's multiply this by a year, and it came to about just over 3,000 rands. And when he looked at it in that fashion, he started realizing, hey, I'm wasting money. It's 20 rand each day. You're not thinking about it. It's coffee. So it's a morning fix. It's what you need to come to class, or it's what you need to go to work and all that. But 20 rand multiplied by 365 days or whatever amount of days, it gives a figure that when you think about it, if you took that 3,000 rands and invested it at a rate of 10.2%, you could have made money. But that 20 rand that you spend on coffee every single day is a financial decision whether we are aware or not. The saddest thing, and I suppose it should have been incorporated in our education system, we are not taught personal finance. We are not taught personal finance at school. So there's these financial decisions and financial decisions we take unaware, right? Whether we are aware of it or not. Now, the problem as well that I want us to look at is that money has a very bad reputation. money has a very, very bad reputation. One, if you don't believe me, money is blamed for a whole lot of things. Wars. There's money made in a war. If America attacks Afghanistan, there's money made. There's someone who's making money. The person who manufactures all those weapons made money. So money has a bad reputation. It's blamed for wars. Money is blamed for broken relationships. Huh? Money is also blamed for what? For broken relationships. Money is also blamed for a whole lot of other things, including ill health. If you want to get a good health in South Africa, you must be willing to pay a lot of money. Private medical care and medical aids, you can ask your parents, cost a lot of money. On average, a family of 4, that is a mother, father, and 2 children, we are looking at something like 7,000 rands for medical aid on a monthly basis. If you cannot afford that, what do you have to do? Shut up my cake. And think about it, shut up my cake compared to Lisedi, compared to life, compared to all the others. So if you don't have money, you are subjected to one of the most ill health systems in the world. Again, those who are Christian blame money for everything. They quote a verse. Right? They quote a verse, it says there, for the love of money is the root of all evil. How many of us have ever heard people saying this? A lot of us, especially Christians, we have this thing that money is the root of all evil. And I always ask people, we need to be honest with ourselves. For us to build proper financial habits and learn how to manage our money, we need to be honest with ourselves. And this honesty is what we need in order to go forward. And I always ask my clients, do you love or do you hate money? A lot of us would be like, oh, I don't want to say I love money. But the fact is, do we love or do we hate money?
We want it.
How many of us love money?
It's not a love-hate relationship. It's not a love-hate relationship.
It's not a love-hate relationship. What is it then?
Huh?
It's a relationship. Some kind of relationship, right? But you see, the gray area is what creates financial problems. You need to be honest with yourself. Do you love or do you hate money? You can't be gray. Unfortunately, money is one of those items in life that you can't be sitting on the fence somewhere and saying, I'm not sure, I'm sure, I'm not sure, I'm sure. You need to decide, do you love or do you hate money? Because from there, you can then build certain financial habits from that space. So Christians as well quote this verse very well, and they say that the love of money is the root of all evil. I want to tell you a story about this gentleman called Thomas Jefferson. Now, Thomas Jefferson died in 1826. Yeah? Thomas Jefferson died in 1826. If you Google the top 5 presidents who died poor, he comes up on that list, even though he died in 1826. Now, Thomas Jefferson was a diplomat. Thomas Jefferson was a psychologist. These are degrees that he had now. Thomas Jefferson was also a psychiatrist. Thomas Jefferson, above all things, he was a statesman. If you read about the Declaration of Independence, which is what brought America into the fore, and the freedom that they talk about, the American dream. This, if you go to America, you get a better life. If you go to America, the American dream that most of us would love to chase, that American dream came out of the Declaration of Independence. We are the most free country ever when 1798, when America was born. So the guy that wrote the Declaration of Independence was this guy, Thomas Jefferson. Now around 1795, 1798, he left America and he went to live for a short period, which is about 6 to 8 months in France. While he was in France, he developed a love for wines that were produced in France, right? So he loved the wine there. And if you read about him as well, you find that when he went back to America, he found that some of the wine that was produced in America, in France, was not produced in America. But because he had developed the love for it, and often at times we often feed our addictions, right? Whatever it is that you're addicted to, often at times we feed it. If it's coffee, you will feed that coffee. You'll pay for that coffee every single day because you need that kick. You need that fix. Whatever it is that gives you a fix. I hope Christians are given a fix by the Bible. But whatever it is that gives you a kick, you'll spend money on it and feed it. And to him, it was the wine. Now, like I said, he stayed 6 to 8 months in France, but he developed the love for wine. In America, when he got there, the wine was not there. So what did he do? Logically, import. Now, around 1798, 1826, we didn't have the luxury of aeroplanes and all that. So everything was transported by sea, right? Now, one of the things that Thomas Jefferson was very sure about was that he wants his wine as crisp as it was manufactured, right? So the way it comes out when it was manufactured, it didn't want anything. So he had a paranoia. He said to himself, when it travels through the sea, what if there's a storm? When it travels by sea, what if all of a sudden there's waves and things start happening, right? Because things happen in the sea. That's why I've never used this shit. But things happen in the sea. I don't want to fall into something I can't see where it ends or where it starts. Unless I break this. So when it travels by the sea, he said, I don't want my wine to be transported in wood canisters. I want it transported in glass. So that even if there's waves in the sea and the wine falls into the sea, water and glass, water won't penetrate that. But if it's wood, over time, when wood is in water, what does it do?
Soaks.
Right? So, and then the wine in there, he said, or believed, out of his paranoia, will be diluted. And so for him, for the wine not to be diluted, I want to transport it by what? By glass. Now, when he died with a debt of, listen to this, 1826, when he died with a debt of 107,000 US dollars. Converted into rands today, we're talking about something like 7 million dollars. And that debt was simply because of the love that he had for wine. Again, talks to what? Personal financial habits that we need to put into place. So we need to also, as we build our finances and looking at black tax and all, we need to start realizing that there's other aspects of it that affect our personal finances. Now, I want to share with you this report by Nambio. I don't know if has anyone of you ever heard of this report. But this report is published by Nambio, and they look at certain things, which is the cost of living or purchasing power. Of course, in that measure, there's an aspect of black tax, cost of living, right? Monetary terms, what are you paying for life? Have you ever heard your parents say, cost of living is too high? It's a famous term, right? In there is factored black tax. And then they look at things like housing affordability, which in South Africa, if you want a decent house, 4-room house, decent, not RDP, you're looking at 1 point something million. That's the price of houses in South Africa nowadays. They look at things like pollution. I think we score very high on this one in South Africa. We need to start working towards greener cars and all that. Quality of health system, like I said, Charlotte Mackay versus life type of a thing. They measured that as well. And they measured traffic, I think, for those of you traveling between Soweto and Johannesburg takes about an hour, right? On peak hour traffic. Whereas when you are in Kroonstad, where I've worked in mining, the same kilometers in less time. So in concentrated urban areas, there's obviously what? There's no future traffic. So when they looked at all these measures, they found that in 2018, South Africa scored 36 out of 60 countries. 30. Number 36 out of 60 countries, which, if all these measures were positive, we would have scored very high. Right? We have scored there in the number 1, number 2, number 3. But we are far down at number 36. And when they did the study in 2019, we ranked number 40 out of 71 countries. Now stay with me, I'm going somewhere. There's this other study that was done by the World Happiness Report in 2019. Now this report measured GDP per capita, again, the purchasing power, same as the other study there. It looks at social support, again, black tax factored in there. Social support, right? Supporting your family and all. They looked at the health, life expectancy, right? So in South Africa, health and life expectancy is seen as something like 40, somewhere there. If you make it beyond 40 and have good health, you are very lucky, right? So you get to photo right? That's what they said. And then it looks at generosity, and in generosity specifically for this report, what was interesting when they looked at South Africa and measured generosity, they said, and in particular, you can go and look at this report, South Africans do not tip their petrol attendants. If you're a parent that drives, do they tip petrol attendants?
Yes.
Very few. But your parents are still, yeah. But most of the time, petrol attendants, you don't tip them. If I give you a time for petrol, tell them, I work of petrol and they leave it. So generosity, South Africa is going down. And what they also look at, the perception of corruption, state capture, all those sort of stuff, Zuma, Cyril Ramaphosa, you know where I'm going. So they looked at how people perceive corruption in South Africa and they scored very high. And we were ranked 106 out of 156 countries.
Yeah.
This thing was measuring our happiness level. If we are sitting there, we are not a happy country. That is why, if you drive around, you see how people quickly snap. Road rage, very high in South Africa. People quickly snap, right? If you're walking in town, you're probably looking around you, right? So your eyes at the back, you on the sides and all those sort of stuff, because we are very paranoid as a country, and perhaps justifiably so, because where we are sitting as a country is not the nicest of places. So we rank 106, so that means we are not the happiest of countries that you could find out there. Now I want to share with you the story of this young lady called Meet Kumo. So Kumo, you can go to Twitter as well, and also on Fin24, you can check who Kumo is. Kumo said this thing. She's a grade 5 teacher in the West Rand, and when she was asked about black tax, she said, I do everything for my family. Yeah? From buying groceries to paying for the DSTV, paying the domestic worker. And she says what's more frustrating is my older sister is unemployed, but she doesn't help out at home. A very familiar story, right? A very familiar story. And she says, when I come back from work, I'm expected to cook. Now how does that make sense? A grade 5 teacher, and what is interesting about the research that they did, and when they talked to her, is this she said right after graduating and got a job. So after graduating, got a job, and she realized I must do everything for my family. So the question is black tax a burden or is it a benefit? Is it a burden or a benefit? So far it's a burden. Now here are some few myths that we want to bust about black tax. Here are a few things that we want to bust about black tax. What I didn't put there is because I want to have a discussion with you around that one. It is black tax is not a South African phenomenon. It's not only in South Africa. And I think sometimes we think we are the only country that experiences black tax, but we are not the only country that experiences black tax. African Americans also experience black tax. Indians, not in South Africa like the ones we see the Bhutas, but the Indians in India also experience black tax. The difference is the degrees at which we experience black tax. But it's not only found in South Africa, even in America and your first world countries, black tax is there. Number two, you need to also realize that black tax was it's a result of an intentional system. Right? It is a result of a what? Of an intentional system that was meant to make sure that the divide between black and white, the haves and the have-not, is systematically done. Now, black tax is not about living a lavish life. Okay? Just like Kumo's sister. She thinks because her sister is working now, she can Same thing that we talked about even yesterday, right? So black tax is not about what? A lavish what? A lavish lifestyle, but it is about fulfilling a responsibility, especially if you have a moral or you feel you've got a moral obligation. If you feel you've got a moral obligation, then it's not about that. Number 3, which we don't like, but it's the truth. You are not forced to. It's still your own decision at the end of the day. No one can force you to experience black tax. The expectations are there, but we need to manage the expectations. So you're not forced. No one will force you into getting into black tax. Now here's something that I want to do as well. I want to talk to you just about some of the few financial problems that you need to take mind of incorporating this black tax into it. The first thing that you need to do, always run away from instant gratification. The trick is, how do you defer gratification, right? How do you defer your own gratification now in light of black tax in order to then satisfy your needs later? Instant what? Instant gratification. I think a lot of ladies experience this. I've had clients in my work where she was working for a financial company, and she was earning about 7,000 rands as an administrator. And when she came to me, she said, "I unfortunately cannot afford, to invest. I cannot afford to save. I cannot afford to do this and that, simply because I think the money that I earn is too little." Now, when she came into our coaching program on personal finance, one of the things that we do is we run an analysis or a diagnostic of sort on your finances and where you're spending your money. The idea is not to infiltrate how you spend money, but it's about understanding your spending patterns, right? So what are you spending your money on? What is it that you do? So one of the things at most, and as an extreme measure, is we usually take the journey with you when you do your groceries and all that and all that. One of the things that we picked up with her was that she actually bought 2 things of the same kind most of the time. And I think this is a lady's phenomenon, because she wants a black shoe, a red shoe, but it's the same shoe, but just that the other one is red, the other one is blue, the other one is black, the other one is what, and these are some of the things. These are some of the things that we see, but that's the truth. I suppose gentlemen will never get to understand this. We need to allow ladies that space to do what they do. But often at times we see them buying and spending money like this out of instant gratification. This shoe, it's red. Oh my God, I love it, and she buys it without thinking twice. Whereas with guys, which often at times causes frustration, is that we enjoy having money in our pockets. Rather than spending it, I love the fact that it's there. It's in my pocket. And if someone once challenged us and said, the problem is that in South Africa, and especially as working professionals, the problem is that your money comes into your bank account and it goes out just like that. Comes in this way and out that way. Comes in this way and out that way. Overnight on a virtual system. So sometimes, and I've tried this, you sort of get a good feeling out of it. Sometimes withdraw 15,000 and just hold it like this. And get a feel of it. What does it feel like to hold 15,000?
Hey, you get mugged, yeah.
Let's just start because, but even if you take it out, feel it, and then take it back into whatever it is. But it's important. I tell you, that's a psychological thing. Very psychological. The moment you can understand how money feels, you can then know how to spend that. It's a psychological thing, and I see this with my clients. It's a psychological thing, but it's the truth. But what we're trying to say is, in personal finance, and even if you are satisfying your moral duty with your black tax, it's important to always realize, defer your gratification in order to build your own personal wealth. Number 2, have you ever seen this? Where someone wakes up on the 3rd or the 4th of the month and like, what did I do with my money? Statistics and this is from State's essay, they say that on average, in South Africa, a working professional salary only lasts about 5 days.
Oh.
After 5 days, you're gonna
Able.
It's the truth. Unfortunately, it's the truth. That's why I was saying yesterday, often at times this also affects our families, because when you go and ask for money, your mom snaps, you don't understand where that comes from. It comes from the fact that she knows I'm money. You don't have money. Have you ever been in a taxi and the taxi driver is like, yeah, short time money? And everyone starts saying, Nami keep you. Nami keep you. Why? Psychological thing. So never ever, if you don't have a budget, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a way of managing your finances, you find yourself in this problem, having a rough estimate of your money, and that causes a lot of financial problems in the lives that we see. The third one, which is a problem as well, this gentleman that I spoke to you about, Thomas Jefferson, when he died in 1826, he wrote what he called the 10 Canons of Life, and he was writing these 10 Canons of Life as an advice to his granddaughter Cornelius. So the third rule in that 10 Canons of Life was never spend money before you have ended. Never ever spend money before you have what? Before you have ended. The fact of the matter is, and you probably see this when you start working, when you go and borrow from a loan shark in order to pay at the end of the month, what have you done? You've already spent the money that's supposed to come end of the month. On the 15th, when you borrow from a loan shark or a friend or whoever it is, where you borrow money, that money when you get it, it's already short. If you're getting a bursary and they give you money every month, we sort of subconsciously, sometimes unaware, plan what I know they're going to give me 5,000 at the end of the month, because that's what they're supposed to give me. What do? You build up debts towards the end of the month. So the time when you get that stipend or when you get the money from the bursary, what have you done? You've already spent it. On the 15th before it came on the 25th. So he said when he died to his granddaughter Cornelius, never ever spend money before you have what? Before you have ended. Very important. So personal finance, I usually break it down to 3 things. One, it's personal. It's personal. It refers to you, no one else. It's about you. Personal. That's what personal finance management for that matter means. You need to start realizing that everything about your money starts with you. How you spend your money starts with you. Right? How you generate that money also starts with you. Now when we talk about finance, we're talking about everything that has to do with income generation and how we spend that money. Often at times, you find that what we spend on is greater than how much we make. And that's why we find ourselves owing people, right? The biggest problem that we have in South Africa is that people live beyond their means. And in order to compensate for the beyond their means, they often have to get into debt to compensate for it, right? So we need to then learn how to manage our finances in such a way that you don't go beyond your means, beyond the money that you have. This means that you need to factor in, again, if you're morally obliged, black tax into your finances, so that the way you are managing your money and the plan that you put into place also factors black tax into it. When you talk about then personal financial management, we're talking about a process. Now, if something is a process, it does not happen overnight. It takes time, right? So it's a process. So we need to start somewhere so that we can go somewhere with your finances. Now, I want to give you just a few suggestions on managing your finances and personal black tax, especially if you feel morally obliged. Again, I will keep on referring to that because some people feel morally obliged, while some of us, sorry, we don't. Set one strategic financial goal. What should you do? Set one strategic financial goal. Setting 10 different financial goals is not going to help you as much as setting 10 different goals at the beginning of the year does not help you.
Okay.
And we have a nice term for it. What do you call them?
New Year's resolutions.
Resolutions, right? When you sit by July, you realize, hey, I haven't done it. Single. Now let me tell you the trick, and this is for free. Let me tell you the trick. The trick is not the number of goals that you set, but the trick is set one goal that has a domino effect. There can be 20, but one of them has to be one that has the ability to knock down the other 19. If you set it like that, then you can be able to achieve all your goals, even outside of your finances. This is now even on your personal life. Set one strategic what? Strategic goal. So if you line all your dice like this, when you hit one, what does it do? It hits all the others. And I say to my clients often at times, you must get to understand your credit score and your credit profile. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. So when you go and apply for credit, right, whether it be for you guys, when you apply for HU loan, they don't go to your names, they go to your parents' names, right? So what happens is you apply for funding at HU loan or whatever financier at bank or whatever for your studies. So what they do is they say, give us your parents' details, right? Payslip, what. So what they do is they then take their name, go to what they call credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and CompuScan. And when they go there, they check what is the credit score of your mother or your father, whoever is going to be financing your studies. And if it's at a certain level, then they either finance or not finance. Right? And then you hear your parents say, why decline me? They decline it based on the credit what? On the credit score. Right? So you will see as well as you go out of university and try and get a job and maybe look at buying a car. In South Africa, on average, first-time employees often buy a car in the first 3 months. It beats me. I don't know why we do that, especially the black community, but that's what happens. So within the first 3 months, they buy a car. So when you buy a car, you put up your name, you put up your payslip, you put up everything, and they go to the credit bureau and they check your score, right? So if you have a good credit profile or a good credit score, it has two things, a domino effect in this way. One, if you have a good score, you are able to negotiate interest rates. If your score is good, when they say we are going to give you a loan for 40,000 at 32%, you can say, I don't want it. 32% is too high. Right? But if your credit score is not good, you cannot negotiate. Because even if ABSA says we'll give you 32%, more likely FNB will also say 32%. ABSA will also say 32%. Capitec, I don't know why. Capitec will also say 32%. So it's this credit score. Once you can sort out your credit score, you can negotiate interest rates.